Welcome to episode number 215 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for all of you marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. We're recording live on YouTube on January 25, 2018. We have a lot of things to go through this week because we took 2 weeks off. 1 week for Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday, and the following week because I just couldn't do it alone anymore. Too much work to do for this podcast. So wait for my fantastic host to come back. And that's the top story of the week. The best story of the week this week is BL is back. So before we get started, before we get into the topics this week, BL, what the hell happened?
Well, back in November, I had an unfortunate encounter with a very big truck, and I was trying to avoid being hit by this truck, and I fell, and I broke my right shoulder in a really big way. And then, because I'm really not that smart, I got up, someone picked me up, and I went along on my way. I went to Port Authority, walked through it. You could go through there in a bunny suit, nobody'd notice you. And I got to my platform, and I tried to move my hand to get my ticket, passed out, hit my head, broke my other elbow. So that's where I've been. I'm back.
You've been in the hospital.
And then in a rehab.
Yeah. And you're still rehabbing. You're going to have a long road ahead of you for a lot of exercise.
I
am. Get back into shape, but you are back in your own home, thank God.
Yeah,
and on
my dog.
With your dog, yes. So welcome back. I'm very, very happy to have you back. It has been too much work without you. I'm self-pitying right now. So.
Well, I understand that, and I think you did a really good job. So
thank you.
I'm just hearing a little feedback on your side. Anyway, I always get to do the best story that I found this weekend.
Let's run through the topics quickly before we get on to the first one. But marching women, top story of the week. The best of CES, since we missed it last week. Camel beauty scandal, clever convention positioning, super student debt relief, sounds of Google Street View, elegant error messages, virtual QB training, not so instant emergency response, YouTube moves the goalposts, press oppression, Logan appalling, Trust takes a dive, HP's unfortunate name, Starbucks attacked, and BL. Take it over, the best story of the week.
Well, you know, with everything that goes on in the world right now, the stories that would have been top of the news and a different feature every day for a long time are just kind of back page news anymore. And so when millions of women all over the world marched, galvanized by our disdain for Mr. Trump and his policies, as the New Yorker pointed out, the 2018 Women's March was less an assertion of outrage and shell-shocked solidarity than a goal-setting exercise. Power to the polls was the overwhelming message, because we're going to be there, we're going to be running, and we're going to be voting. The sheer magnitude of this march should have dominated the news, but Saturday Night Live nailed it when they had a game show called What Even Matters Anymore, where you hear the heinous things that the president said or did, and contestants tell whether it matters anymore, and the answer is zero consequences, everyone moves on. And the New York Times has excellent multimedia coverage of the march, and Flipboard has a great gallery of photographs. More than 200,000 protesters attended the march in New York, according to Mayor de Blasio. In Los Angeles, 600,000 attended it, and in Chicago, 300,000. Thousands also turned out all over the world, in Philadelphia, in Austin, in London. I mean, you name it, we were out there, and the news disappeared. You're not hearing about it anymore. Why is that? We're hearing about prostitutes in the White House.
Yeah, well, I suspect we're going to hear more about it in the future. I don't think that's a one-day story, but it was a pretty massive one-day story. The pictures were phenomenal from the sky down and the streets being flooded. Pretty amazing. Another huge story that happens every year is CES, Consumer Electronics Show, and that happened again predictably this year, recently. This is from a CNET article covering the best of CES and a Mashable article covering the best of CES. Got a long list of things, but I'm just going to run through a few that of the interesting things that were revealed at CES this year. Robots, we love robots, BL. There is a folding robot, a robot that folds laundry, Foldmate.
Oh, I want that one.
You put your clothes in the machine, and it'll fold them up and dispense them into a nice, neat little pile. It'll cost you $1,000 though. The significance is not that it's a folding robot, but that's a technological burden or hurdle that robotics have to overcome, and it looks like they have. The problem of folding clothes is it requires very minute and complicated movements to fold clothes properly that we don't even think of when we do it with our fingers because we're so amazing machines ourselves. So that's an interesting bar that has been crossed. Sony Aibo is back with some new tricks. It's equipped with artificial intelligence, you know, the cute little dog robot, equipped with artificial intelligence that can now recognize and respond to multiple family members. It's got wireless cloud connectivity and will store and process everything that it learns from living with you. So caveat emptor, right? Another robot that will clean your house, pick up after you, keep an eye on things. It has Alexa built in. That's a common theme, voice activation across a lot of the things that were shown at CES this year. There's a 6DOF blaster, Merge 6DOF blaster. It is an augmented reality laser tag gun. So it's like a Nerf gun, but it's augmented reality enabled. So you can play with an actual gun. And HT Vive Pro has enhanced resolution, integrated headphones, and wait for it, wireless. It's no longer tethered to a wire with your virtual reality goggles. So you can walk around and fall down the stairs.
Which you probably will do.
Right. In transportation, there's some Volocopter. Sorry, I was going to say Velociraptor. Volocopter is an autonomous passenger drone. The CEO, Florian Reuter, said it's extremely simple to fly, quiet, and when running on its batteries, emission-free. It won't be available in the U.S. until it receives approval, of course. Lyft is developing self-driving cars. Razer Project Linda is a computer that doesn't have Intel inside. You take your Razer Android powered phone, and there's a slot in the laptop for you to slide your phone into, and basically your phone is the processing unit and the laptop is a display unit. So it's basically you use your phone is a computer, so that's what you use that for. It's pretty interesting. LG has a rollable TV, 65-inch 4K OLED that rolls into a tube, so you can have
roll it up and put it in.
Roll it up. You can like have it on the top of your wall and pull it down like the old screens, right? But it's a rollable tube. So a lot of display technology coming out. What else do we got? Consumer Toto floating tub. This is interesting. Marble covered bathtub. It can simulate the feeling of floating in space. So there's a series of integrated jets that lift your feet off the floor of the tub. It's surrounded with LED lights to add ambiance. Sounds pretty cool, right?
How much?
$19,000. So there's that. Delta Alexa faucet, voice activated faucet. Shut up. I have to tell my Alexa to shut up. Wearables. There's a Blade smart glasses are coming back. L'Oreal UV Sense has developed battery-free wearable that measures UV exposure. So it's only 2 millimeters thick, 9 millimeters in diameter. It's a tiny electronic sensor that can be worn on a fingernail, or you can put it on your sunglasses, and it'll basically measure the UV exposure and let you know before you burn yourself up. So that's it from CES. One additional story, a marketing story from CES. I noticed this as I was watching the coverage. Mike Murphy, a reporter from Quartz, changed the name of his Twitter account. He didn't change his handle, but he just changed the name in his Twitter account to be Mike Murphy is at CES as he was reporting from the conference. I thought that's a clever tactic to promote your attendance at an event. Just change the name on your Twitter account saying that you're an event, and then of course you need to live tweet the event. But I got a screenshot of that. We'll put that in the show notes.
That's a very smart idea. Of course, then there was the robot this week that I'm trying to think of where it was. I was going to include it. They had a robot in a supermarket that was supposed to help people shop, and it was so creepy to everybody that they had to get rid of it. So, you know, these things happen. So on a completely different note, there was a terrible scandal in Saudi Arabia at the Camel Beauty Contest. It involved Botox. And this is from a story, well, there are several stories actually, but the Hollywood Reporter, Sam Reed, and the scandal caused 12 camels to be disqualified from King Abdulaziz Camel Festival Beauty Contest in Arabia. Yes, camels, exactly. 30,000 of them participated, and this is kind of like the Super Bowl of camel pageantry. And of course, the story trended on Twitter. Everybody from the Hollywood Reporter to the New York Times and Reuters tweeted links to their stories, and all those were retweeted hundreds and sometimes thousands of times. A Google search reveals 104,000 results. A tweet by Reuters Top News, this was Reuters Top News that day, included a video that was viewed 85,000 times. So as Sam Reed pointed out in the Hollywood Reporter, the prize money totaled US $57 million, and 30 million of that is just for, quote, pageantry. So it's not surprising that some of the handlers would want to get a hump up on the other 30,000 camels. So what distinguishes a beautiful camel, you're probably wondering, is not just its height, shape, and the placement of its hump. A beautiful camel has a full droopy lip and large features, and these are essential to achieving celebrity camel status, and it's actually a multi-million-dollar industry. So to achieve these lovely features, Ali Mazrul, the son of a top Emirati breeder, said Botox was used for the lips, the nose, and even the jaw. He said, it makes the head more inflated. So when the camel comes toward you, it's like, oh, look at how big that head is. Oh, and it has big lips and a big nose. It's gorgeous. So days before the festival started, a veterinarian was caught red-handed doing plastic surgery on camels. And at his clinic, he was not only giving them Botox, but he was reducing the size of their ears because delicate ears are a winning attribute for camels. And also part of the festival, camel racing and camel milk tasting. So the contest has been running since 2000, and it was in a remote desert area. And they actually have a purpose-built permanent venue for it now, right north of the capital, and 300,000 visitors have attended the festival since it began on January 1st, up 1/3 from last year. You got to see the camels. They are gorgeous.
Now that I know what to look for.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, so I wonder if there's a Google Street View of the camel pageant.
I will have to look for that because that would be hilarious.
If there is, maybe it has a soundtrack. There's a article by at Fast Company by Mark Wilson that discusses just that, coincidentally enough. The New York's Botanical Garden, you can go on this website that has basically mashed up ambient sounds with Google Street View landscapes. So you could go to the New York's Botanical Garden and hear children shouting and playing in the distance. There's a highway in Tokyo that you can hear cars whoosh by with so much detail. You can hear the first drops of rain hitting the street. In Barcelona Cathedral, you can hear priests chant in Latin, and the voices echo around the cavernous space. None of the sounds, however, are real. At least they weren't recorded at the place that you're seeing them on Google Street View. Instead, an AI has added a soundtrack to all of Street View, and often the sounds are so convincing that you wouldn't know that they were faked. The project is called Imaginary Soundscape, and it was created by Nao Tokui, who used a pair of neural networks that were first developed by MIT. One network learned how to identify the contents of images and video frames, and the other network learned how to identify audio distinguishing sounds like environmental acoustics, and then combined the logic of the two so that it would match a scene with the open source audio tracks they found. So they created a website that you can go to and look at Google Street View with soundtracks. It's pretty cool, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Is it an art project, Dave?
I think it's just a machine learning project.
Very interesting. I like that. So the other thing that I like a lot is Anheuser-Busch is using their Super Bowl to have an ad that offers to pay down student debt. Their brand is Natty Light, and this spot is only going to appear in 10 local markets to plug a sweepstakes program in which they're giving away $1 million to help current and former college students pay off their loans. And the goal is to reach college drinkers 21 and older in those 10 markets that have a high population of students and recent graduates, because that's the key audience for the brand. So to enter the contest, you have to post a video on social media describing your inspiration for going to college with the hashtags Natty Stories and contest. And then you have to include in it a shot of the new green pull tab from the cans of a limited edition of Natural Light. 25 winners are going to get $40,000 each to help pay down their debt. And the ad itself is a low budget ad that's running on YouTube, and it shows a bunch of college kids doing slip and slide down a college dorm hallway. New Girl actor Jake Johnson is the spokesperson for the campaign. And apparently, according to the Federal Reserve, 44.2 million Americans have student loan debt, totaling nearly $1.5 trillion. So to me, the campaign looks like a really smart play to tap into a real life situation and encourage sharing on social networks, because who wouldn't want to win that contest?
Right. No, well, that's very smart. As you know, BL, the Super Bowl this year is in my home state of Minnesota. We're hosting it in Minneapolis, where I work, downtown Minneapolis. I'm thinking probably I'll take most of the week off next week and work from home and not have to deal with the throngs that are there. If my Vikings were in the Super Bowl, I would be downtown all the time, of course, but they're not. Tragically, they lost to the Eagles last week. But I did go to the first playoff game, BL, against the New Orleans Saints. The hated New Orleans Saints, who cheated us out of our last Super Bowl run. And I had the most amazing seats. I had front row seats. BL, I'm sure you didn't watch it. You're preoccupied with your, I know you wanted to, right? But you're preoccupied.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed it.
Preoccupied with your getting well. But it was the game of the century. It was the most exciting football game I've ever seen in my entire life, and I'm not joking. I've been watching football since I was like 7 years old, and the Vikings were down by 1 point with 10 seconds left in the game, and the Vikings had to drive and score a touchdown, or they need to score to win the game, and they did. I threw up a bomb, and our receiver caught it and ran down the length of the field, and I was there, front row seat. I have videotape of it that is just amazing. Perfect view of it, of the touchdown that won the game in the final seconds as the clock ran out. So I just got to say, go Vikings. Next year we'll do better. But there's an actual story to this. Our quarterback, Case Keenum, came in. He was our backup quarterback. And after our starter, Sam Bradford, was injured after the first game of the season, this guy named Case Keenum, who had always been a backup, came in and took the team practically to the Super Bowl. It's a great underdog story. He had kind of been a journeyman when the Vikings signed him in the offseason. I'm like, yeah, well, he's probably an upgrade over our current backup, but if we get to him, then our season's not going to go too well. Much did I know, right? Case Keenum, according to an ESPN story by Courtney Cronin, had been using virtual reality to learn the Vikings offense. So he's a new team. He was signed last offseason. He's new to the team. He doesn't know the Vikings system. And so they practice. And as a backup, you don't get a lot of practice because the starter gets all the practice reps. So he used this program called Strive VR. Strive VR. It's an industry leader in virtual reality training. Back in the spring, when he was just added to the Vikings as a backup, the general manager and our offensive coordinator sat down with the quarterbacks and asked them if they wanted to try this virtual reality program. And according to the CEO of Strive VR, Derek Belch, that's his name, Belch, he said Keenum had a demo with the previous team, decided to be beneficial to work with. So he started using it when he wasn't getting his team reps. He started just going through the plays using virtual reality so you can see how the plays plan out. And he did this throughout the season and basically learned the Vikings offense in twice the time it would have taken normally. Quarterbacks take typically 3 years to get used to a system. He did it in less than a year. So pretty amazing, and it makes a lot of sense because you get those mental reps and you get the brain wired to the way plays are folding out. You can make decisions a lot quicker. So interesting case study in virtual reality.
I'm sure your heart is broken.
It is, but
it is.
I long decided as a Vikings fan, I long decided that enjoy the ride and don't let a football game ruin your day. So they lost. Okay,
fair enough. So speaking about losers, the governor of Hawaii didn't correct the false missile alert that terrified everybody on the island. This is from a Washington Post story by Travis Andrews, and this has to be the worst excuse ever. David, I think it's pronounced Iji, governor of Hawaii, said it took him 38 minutes to get on Twitter and say that the missile coming toward them was not coming. And why was that? Because he couldn't log into Twitter. He said, I have to confess that I don't know my Twitter account logons and passwords. So certainly that's one of the changes that I've made. Okay, minutes after Hawaii's emergency management agency mistakenly sent an alert at 8:07 in the morning on January 13th, terrifying everybody, some officials, such as Representative Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat of Hawaii, rushed to Twitter to reassure everybody it was a mistake. But on Twitter, one account was deafeningly silent for 17 minutes. That was the governor. And he was informed 2 minutes after the alert was sent, but he waited until 8:24 to tweet, "There is no missile threat." On Monday, after he gave the State of the Union address, in which he avoided the subject, reporters demanded an explanation. And that was it. I didn't know my password for Twitter.
Well, bad excuses just keep coming. So somebody pushed the wrong button to scare the shit out of everybody that a missile is coming. And then it takes forever because somebody dumbass doesn't know what his password is for his Twitter account.
I mean, really. So, I don't know what to make of that if we ever get alerts on our phones. We don't go to Twitter to find out, I guess.
Exactly. Go to somebody.
I do have to tell you one thing, Dave. One of the roommates I had when I was in the rehab place with my arm was a football fiend. She was watching football all the time, which drove me insane, just so you know. So actually, she did have that game on.
You should have watched it. You might have seen me cheering. So my worst story is, this is from a Verge article by Chaim Gertenberg. Something called Logan Paul who appears to be a really sad excuse for a human being, was involved in a huge controversy the past couple of weeks ago. He recorded a video. He's a YouTube star, I guess. He recorded a video of a recent suicide victim hanging from a tree in an infamous Japanese forest that's known as a place where people commit suicide. The guy's hugely popular on YouTube. He's got 16 million subscribers. His shtick is bragging about his successes and insulting other people and cultures, so go figure. The outrage rightly ensued after he posted the video. He took it down. He issued an apology. But YouTube, after remaining silent for a significant period, finally decided to drop him from its preferred partner program for these YouTube stars. But they didn't say anything about the ordinary partner program, dropping him from that. So there's that. But turns out I got an email this past week that I'm being dropped from YouTube's preferred ordinary partner program. So this is from a YouTube blog post by Neil Mohan, who's a chief product officer, and Robert Kinkle, who's the chief business officer. They are changing their eligibility requirements for monetization of YouTube videos to 4,000 hours of watch time within the past 12 months and 1,000 subscribers. So you need to have 1,000 subscribers for your channel now, and you need to have had 4,000 hours of watch time during the past year. They say they arrived at the new threshold after thorough analysis and conversations with creators like me, but no, they never talked to me, never asked me about it. They say it will allow for significant improvement in their ability to identify creators who contribute positively to the community and help drive more ad revenue to them. The higher standards will also help them prevent potentially inappropriate videos from monetizing. So on February 20th, they will implement this new threshold across existing channels and allow, and then channels with fewer than 1,000 subs or 4,000 hours of watch time will no longer be able to earn money. And if you reach that threshold of 1,000 subs and 4,000 hours watch time, you'll be reevaluated under their new guidelines. New channels will need to apply. So BL, I've got two channels. I got my personal channel, which I have 478 subscribers to. I have 1,540 videos on that channel. During the past year, I've had 147,000 views. My watch time has been 183,829 minutes, which equals 3,063 hours. The revenue for that was $170. Okay, not much, but a couple of nights on the town, right? Top videos, because of all the horrible video I'm uploading to my YouTube channels, my top videos were difference between a 6-string and a 12-string guitar, how to dry shoes quickly, how to buy a football, and Vikings versus Saints playoff game videos, of course.
Well, you'll be unhappy to hear that the show is also no longer able to be monetized.
Of course not. Yep. We
got that notice tonight, yeah.
I have an eStrategy. My eStrategy channel has over 1,000 subscribers. I have 770 videos on it. It's all marketing related. There's nothing, horrible about the content. Nothing even. It's just marketing related.
Dangerous marketing, Dave. There's lots of that going around.
So $136 of revenue out of that for the past year. Again, nothing really, but okay.
But it was your $136,
Yeah. So YouTube is really kind of pulling the rug out from small-time creators who actually create real value for YouTube. So I think, if you're small-time, I don't really care about the monetization for my videos, but if you do, you got to rethink your strategy now. Maybe shift to Facebook and look at their monetizing videos. I think it's really a short-sighted decision by YouTube to kind of do this, but whatever. There you go.
Well, finally, there is something that's deserved. Trump got named the #1 global oppressor of the press. And it's finally an award that he deserves. And the Committee to Protect Journalists, has made him the top winner in global oppressor of the press. He tops Turkey, China, Egypt and Russia's leaders, and in response to the fake news awards ceremony, the Committee to Protect Journalists is protecting world leaders who've gone out of their way to attack the press and undermine the norms of free speech that support the media. And contenders, Egypt, Turkey, China, Russia, and the United States, talk about a club you wouldn't want America to join. And for an unparalleled fear of their critics and the truth, to relentless commitment to censorship, these 5 leaders and their runners-up in their categories have gone above and beyond this to silence critical voices and weaken democracy. Categories included most thin-skinned. Trump was a runner-up, and to President Erdogan of Turkey. Over the course of 2016, the Turkish judicial system handled 46,193 cases of, quote, insulting the president or insulting the Turkish nation, the Republic of Turkey, the parliament, the government, or the institutions of the judiciary. Since declaring his presidential candidacy in 2015, Trump has posted about 1,000 tweets critical of the press. Committee to Protect Journalists research shows that when public figures and political leaders lob insults at the media, they encourage self-censorship and expose journalists to unnecessary risks. Other categories: most outrageous use of terror laws against the press, most thin-skinned, tightest grip on the media. Putin is a runner-up to President Xi Jinping of China. This category excludes countries with no independent media like North Korea. And then the biggest backslider in press freedom. And then, the overall biggest achievement, our president.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the good side of that is, with the exception of the sort of right-wing propaganda machines, the press in the United States is actually fighting back and fighting back fairly strongly. So,
and this is one indicator of it. I mean, they've made quite clear that they're going to not take this laying down, and that's what we want to hear. That's what we support. That's what the march supported.
So one press story about CES I didn't mention because I saved it for this little tidbit, which is in worst, but it could have been in best because it's kind of funny. This is from a NextWeb article by Abhimanyu Ghoshal. And at CES this year, HP showed off a new laptop that they unveiled that they claim is the world's most powerful convertible computer. The only problem is the HP Spectre X360 shares its name with one of the biggest security flaws in the history of computing. The Spectre flaw that is in Intel chips and has been for the past decade or so. So, oops, on the naming front.
You do have to wonder, doesn't anybody check these things?
They named it before the word of the Spectre flaw came out, I'm sure. But
or not, Speaking of bad timing, the Edelman Trust Barometer for 2018 has been published, and it shows a huge collapse of trust in the United States. And it's a survey of 28 countries, and the United States has a 37% slump in trust across government, media, businesses, and non-governmental organizations. That's the biggest drop in the world in the past year. The collapse of trust in the U.S. is driven by a staggering lack of faith in government, which fell 14 points to 33%. The remaining U.S. institutions of business, media, NGOs also had declines as much as 20%. But what was really kind of unsettling is the least trusted of all for the very first time worldwide is the media. The lack of faith in the media also led to an inability to identify the truth. 59% said they can't tell when it's the truth. Trusting government leaders, only 56% do, and trusting businesses, only 42%. 63% of respondents said they don't know how to tell good journalism from rumor or falsehoods if a piece of news was produced by a respected news organization. And one paradox in the data was, although faith in the media platform appears to be falling, one submeasure suggested the credibility of individual journalists has risen substantially. And the other thing that's really a big change is that there's a revival of faith in experts and a decline in faith in peers. So 63% trust the technical experts, and academic experts are trusted by 61%, but they think of those people as the most credible spokesperson, not a person like yourself. That dropped to an all-time low of only 54%. So the question there is social media losing its power in any way? And I guess that remains to be seen, but those are some very big changes in how people feel.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that dynamic has to do entirely with Facebook and people in this highly polarized, since the last presidential election, highly polarized political environment where you start seeing some of the ridiculous arguments that people are posting online, individuals, peers, people that you know who aren't experts, and you start thinking of experts in a different light.
You do, and that, that is probably a very good change, but it's not one. This has been a long time when people like you was the biggest trust, and you're going to listen to people like yourself all the time. You're going to find yourself pretty quickly in a bubble.
Well, and it depends on what you're depending on them for. If you're depending on them for a review of a restaurant, you're going to be far more likely to trust a person like me than an expert. But when you're depending on them for the news of the day, you're probably going to, that's where that dynamic changes.
Well, you see it all the time on Facebook, people posting links to things that they haven't bothered to check on Snopes, and then those things go around. And we could talk for an hour about the change in Facebook in the past week, but we'll save that.
Yeah, well, unremittent attacks on institutions will have their effects, and here's an attack story by Alex Horton at the Washington Post about Facebook, about Facebook and about Starbucks. So there was a Facebook post claiming to be from a Starbucks employee that elicited outrage and disgust. The post was claiming to be from an Atlanta area Starbucks employee named Chanel Rivers, the post said, she targeted white customers by spitting in their coffee, sprinkling dog feces in the child's hot chocolate, and mixing blood into jam. So the images mushroomed on social media. Starbucks was trying to reassure customers in a post that it was a fake post. It was maliciously created. But that was after the phone started ringing in an Atlanta suburb where threats were coming to. And Starbucks, the store was in Brookhaven, north of Atlanta, and they had to close 2 hours early as a result of this fake scandal. PR Daily's Ted Kitterman has Starbucks rebuttal. They said in a post, "This post is completely false and created maliciously. Starbucks does not have a partner employee by the name of Chanel Rivers. We are working with local authorities to determine how these fake posts were created and circulated." But you look at the responses underneath that Facebook's post, and it's full of conspiracy theorists and obvious partisans and everything. But an interesting example of a politically motivated attack on a company, and this stuff just continues. How you inoculate yourself is actually Starbucks has a really strong brand. They stand for things, and their loyal customers are not likely to buy into the story and are more likely to believe Facebook's response, Starbucks' response. So anyway, I think you can continue to see this kind of stuff. One last thing on the worst stories. This is too long, must read. There's a fascinating article in BuzzFeed by Joseph Burstein and Ryan Mack. I'm not going to go into it, but we'll leave a link in the show notes. But it's about how Steve Bannon and Breitbart News planned a broad attack, both legal, financial, editorial, to damage Twitter. It's absolutely fascinating, but it is another example of politically motivated attacks on companies. So there you go.
And those are really hard to defend against when they are that widespread. But I will say that I'm hoping that Howard Schultz, who's the CEO of Starbucks is going to run for president in 2020. I'll vote for him. I'd work for him for nothing, just so you know. Does that bring us to shiny objects?
It does. What do you got this week, BL?
Well, this is not an object, actually, but it's something that is really worth reading. It's Mark Glazer's daily newsletter with the best in digital media news, features, and events. And it's called Media Shift, and it's absolutely something you should subscribe to. He very concisely tells you some of the best, most important news of the day, and I wouldn't miss it for a day.
Very cool. I'll check it out. I've been working on Instagram, paying a lot of attention to Instagram these days for a project, and so I'm going to share with you some Instagram apps or cool tools. This one's called Tags for Likes, and it's a website. And what it does is basically collects the top hashtags for popular Instagram categories, so you can just copy and paste them into your posts. Of course, Instagram allows a lot of hashtags in their posts, and it's not culturally inappropriate to include a lot of hashtags, so you might as well. Helps you get found. So you have like food tags, categories for food tags, and it just has a bunch of them that you can copy and paste into your post to be found. Holiday tags, weather tags, animal tags. People love posting photos of their pets on Instagram. Architecture tags, just goes on through broad categories that you can just copy and paste and use. So that's a nice tool. And then there's another app that I found. It's an iPhone app called Magic Likes Meter. It's kind of fascinating. iPhone app, you basically like Instagram photos, kind of Tinder for Instagram photos. You basically skip photos you don't like and like photos you like. You hook it up to your Instagram account, and what you do is you build up credits, and by liking photos through this app, and then you can cash in the credits, select a photo on your Instagram account that you want to build up likes for, and cash in those credits, and people who are using this app will basically like your photo and build up social proof. So if you're starting a new Instagram account and you don't have many followers and your photos aren't very widespread and people aren't liking them, it's a way of kind of building some social proof for people to say, okay, well, other people like us, I must like it too. So interesting concept. Not bots. It's not bots. It's actually people who are doing the liking. So I thought it was a clever app, and something I probably will use to get an Instagram account started at least.
That sounds like something worth checking out. I came across the Shorter Thesaurus this week, and it's a great tool for headline writing and tweeting, and it comes from the Journalist Toolbox, which is a site that's maintained by David Friedman, and it will give you put in a long word, and it gives you some shorter words that you can use that have the same meaning. So it's a really helpful thing when you were trying to write headlines or trying to write captions or tweeting, I think shorter is pretty much always better. That's just my philosophy.
I don't know so much about that. I'm pretty much of a sesquipedalian, so I don't think I'll use that.
You're a what?
I'm a sesquipedalian.
And that is?
Somebody who uses long words.
Okay. The other thing that I found that I thought was pretty cool is the Journalist Toolbox from the Society of Professional Journalists, and it's a fabulous list of copy editing resources from the Society of Professional Journalists, and it includes news gathering links and verification tools, and it has an app for editing on a smartphone, lots more. It's a page you should definitely bookmark. It's got wonderful stuff in it if you write anything at all.
Okay, it does have long words though.
Yeah, well, you can use those.
Okay, good. So my last one is a tool called Accur AR. It's wireframe software. So I'm working on a large website redesign project. Most websites don't need wireframing. You can, then handful of pages you're going to need, but this is a rather in-depth website that I'm working on with our development team. So I'm using this software to create wireframes out of it. Wireframes are the boxes that illustrate the structure of the site, and then you can do a wireframe of the layouts of the site so the developers know where you want information, where you want the hero photo, and where you want a call to action button, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really cool, this software. There's an enterprise license for around $500, but you can get a monthly subscription starting at $29 a month. So it's fairly inexpensive if you're a one-time operator and you're dealing with a client that you need a wireframe for. The nice thing about it is you can create your wireframes. It's really point and click and easy to use. But then you can export it to a server and provide a actual interactive wireframe that people can click around and go from page to page and see how it works without building out the entire site. So you can collaborate with others. So that's a cool tool.
That sounds like a pretty substantial tool.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, $29 sounds like not enough to pay for that.
Right.
So you're in a couple of projects this week.
I do. So CMS Wire's Dom Nicastro quoted me in an article on You'll Love This, BL. Digital marketers share strategies for Twitter's new 280-character limit. So as someone are you still opposed to the 280
I am
character
opposed to it. Yes, I am. I really just think that a little bit less is more. And I really don't have the patience to read people who can't edit themselves. I'm sorry.
Well, who was it that said too much of a good thing is a better thing?
No, I don't think there was
West,
anybody who said that. I think you made that up.
West. So anyway, I listed some of the things that I use the extra space for. One of which is job openings for our agency. You can include a lot more to attract candidates. So it's more appealing candidates. We use it for the post for the podcast to list more subjects that we cover in each episode. So more room, more opportunity for people to get interested in podcast PL. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm keeping my tweets neat. That's all I can tell you. So speaking of tweets, one of mine was included in the Muck Rack Daily this week, and it was one about how Melania is not going to Davos. And I said, my tweet was, she's probably worried that the weather will be stormy. And so that was quoted. Oh my God, what a disaster.
So I have a blog post too. So I mentioned that I went to the Vikings Saints playoff game, and I did a blog post for our agency about the social media lessons I learned from attending the game. One of which is timing is everything. So I posted the winning touchdown on Instagram immediately after it happened, and because everybody was so excited about it, it got a lot of tractions, a lot of views. But the crowd reaction shots that I took, I posted on YouTube, and they only took off a day later when after people were luxuriating in the glorious win by the Vikings. They look at all the clips of the game and everything, but after they're done saturated with that content, then they turn to how the crowd reacts, and that's why those videos took off when they did. So, and I'll post the link to that in the show notes, and people can read it if they want.
So sad that your Vikings lost, Dave. I really think it affected you in a big way.
It is something that I am used to, BL. I have been struck by football tragedy. But actually, the first time I ever understood what injustice meant was during the Vikings game when I was 10 years old, and the Vikings lost in the NFC Championship game to the Dallas Cowboys. And I cried. I cried over that game because the Vikings, I was sure, going to the World Series, the Super Bowl, and I learned that it was injustice because Drew Pearson, the Dallas Cowboys receiver, actually committed a penalty for them to win.
This was when you were 9 years old?
I was 9 years old. I was
And
like,
you
that's
remember
not fair. That's not fair. Yeah,
Okay,
they got
Dave.
away with it. They got away with it.
Okay, then, Dave.
All right, so let's wrap this up. We got
Okay.
daily numbers.
Oh, go ahead. Daily numbers.
Robocalls. Robocalls were the #1 type of call in fiscal year 2017, according to the National Do Not Call Registry complaint numbers. So there you go. Robocalls are all over the place, and that's it. Simple and sweet. One big number for you.
Well, they've gotten so sneaky. You know, they use your local area code, and I mean, and it's always the same person who calls about the damn Hilton hotels. But in any case, that brings us to the end of episode 215 of the Beyond Social Media Show. David Erickson is on Twitter as D. Erickson. He writes estrategyblog.com. He blogs at creativepr.com/blog. He's eStrategy on YouTube. I'm BL Ochman, and I'm glad to be back. And I am at What's Next on Twitter. I blog at What's Next blog. I'm What's Next blog on YouTube, and I have blochman.com is my website. And the show is on BeyondSocialMediaShow.com. Something's wrong with my mouse. BeyondSocialMediaShow.com. And we're on YouTube. We're on Google+. We're on Twitter as BS Media Show. And we're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on Google Play. You have no excuse for not listening to us. And we hope you will subscribe. And we will be back next week. Same time, same station. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.